So, welcome back to our podcast and YouTube channel where we talk about all things kind of HR and business related. Today, I am joined by the fabulous Chris Eastwood, who is co-founder and co-CEO of Penfold, who provide a digital pension which helps to simplify everything in terms of your retirement savings. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, Trish. Really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited that you're here because I am rubbish with numbers and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only person. So it would be great to just simplify pensions and how they work for business owners so that they know what they need to do. So thank you.
Absolute pleasure. There's a lot of numbers involved with pensions, unfortunately, which is part of the problem. So happy to help in any way that I can.
Fabulous. So let's start with the real basics then. What exactly is a pension?
Yeah, so ultimately, a pension is the best way to save enough so you can support yourself in later life when you want to stop work. So, it's a tax efficient savings vehicle that really allows you to put money into a savings account free of income tax, allow that to grow for a few decades while you continue to work. And then you can take it out and create an income for yourself from that pot of money. So you don't have to keep working right until the end of your life. So that's really the fundamentals of a pension scheme. So the government provides tax incentives to help people do that, and the trade-off is that you can't take money out of that scheme until you're 55 years old. So it's a long-term savings vehicle that allows you to save for later life in a tax-efficient way.
So that sounds super positive and really, really good, but why do pensions have a bit of a bad reputation?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of complexity with pensions. So I've simplified the answer there. There are a few different types of pension schemes, lots of rules. There's unfortunately an industry that likes to potentially overcomplicate matters with pensions. So unfortunately, there's a lot of jargon. There's a lot of complexity, hard to understand a lot of the rules. That's so it's sort of quite difficult to enter and understand the world of pensions. And then the other problem I think I would say is that it's quite hard to use pensions. The industry has also made it a bit too difficult in terms of the interactions you have with pension companies. So a lot of traditional pension providers are a little old-fashioned in terms of their processes. And the infrastructure and the systems that they use to operate. So what that means is that every time someone wants to use or interact with their pension, so open an account or pay into it or take money out of it or move it when they move from job to job, it's just quite difficult. And they often can't get on the end of the phone with anyone. So there's little customer service. So you have these two problems where it's hard to understand pensions and then it's quite hard to deal with pension companies. And I think that generally makes people switch off. And when you combine all of that with the fact that this is something that benefits you in maybe 10, 20, 30 years time, it's those three things together mean that people unfortunately tend to drop it to the bottom of their to-do list and maybe sort of hide under the covers a little bit when it comes to pensions. So we're here to try and change those things.
Oh, fabulous. And I think you've kind of alluded to it a little bit already, but why are pensions so important? Why do we need to be focusing on pensions now or kind of earlier on in our careers?
Yeah, we have a bit of a crisis going on. It's a really, really big problem. Some call it the silent savings crisis, where according to the Pension and Lifetime Savings Association, the PLSA, 79% of the UK population is not on track for a comfortable retirement. Hopefully I won't bore you with the details here, but very short story is that maybe 20, 30 years ago, people tended to work for one employer for a very long time. That employer would generally offer a type of pension scheme called defined benefit that would guarantee you an income level after you stop work until the day you unfortunately die. But that meant that it was the company's responsibility to look after you in retirement. That doesn't really exist anymore. And what we've now moved to the world of defined contribution pension schemes, where it's up to the individual to save up enough in a savings pot so that they can then take money out of that to support themselves. Unfortunately, that's not really happening. So people aren't saving enough for later life. And, you know, what that's going to mean is that either the government's going to have to try and support people, which they won't be able to afford to, or people are going to have to keep working well into their later life, into their 80s and beyond. So big problem that people aren't saving enough. Pensions are important because that's how you support yourself. That's one of the best ways to support yourself when you want to stop work. So really important that people start to pay more attention to this fact.
And you mentioned that obviously back in the day people would stay with one employer, and I suppose now it's more common for people to move around maybe every 2, 3, 4 years. With pensions, and can you move them around to different companies, or with that onus that you mentioned on the individual, what should people be doing when they move companies?
Yeah, so the answer is you can. It's quite difficult. So every company, people tend to move jobs every 2-3 years, as you know, and when each company has to offer a pension scheme to their staff, but they don't have to. But they will typically use different pension schemes than the previous company. So you know, you may have one provider, then you move jobs, and the new job has a different provider. That will mean that you have two pensions. You have the pension that you had from the first job, and then you've got a new pension from the new job. You can combine them together, but what I was talking about earlier around it's hard to deal with pension companies, that process is quite painful. That can be solved, and hopefully we're solving that problem a little bit, making that easier. But yes, you can combine them together. You know, the ideal world it would be that you don't need to do anything. You know, there's this concept, what's called in the industry pot follows member, where you pick. This happens in Australia. You pick a pension provider, and then every time you move jobs, your employer pays into that pension. So you never have to move things around. It's not, you don't have to keep track of different pots. And I think that's what we're trying to achieve with Penfold, even if the UK market isn't quite there yet. We're trying to create a pension scheme that someone can keep with them for life, that makes it as easy as possible for the different employers they work for to keep paying into it. So they can just keep that money growing and growing as they go through their career. But yes, to the answer to your question, you can combine them together, but you have to go through a process on your own. No one's going to, unfortunately, help you with that from the pension provider's point of view.
And where we've been talking a little bit about the difficulties there are with pension organisations, what kind of things are Penfold doing to deal with that? So it sounds like there's potentially an issue with customer service and being able to get hold of people. What do you guys do that's different to your standard pension provider?
Yeah, I think if we go back to those two, the two main problems that we see with the pension industry is a lack of understanding. You know, there's not enough clear education, and the way that pensions are talked about is not relatable to everyday people. That's problem number one. Problem number two, pension companies are really hard to deal with, little customer service, lots of friction, difficult platforms to use, etc. We're really trying to solve those two problems through technology. So we call ourselves a digital pension. I mean, what that really means is that we started from scratch and we've built our own pension scheme with the latest technology. And the latest technology and building from scratch means that we are not held back by problems of the past in terms of inefficiency, which is causing some of those problems I talked about around low customer service and difficult to use platforms. We are able to, unfortunately, there's a load of operating processes and things that you have to do to run a pension scheme. As I say, it's quite complex, but we've been able to automate a lot of that. So we've built a system that does all of that automatically through technology, which means that we can provide a pension scheme to people that is very responsive, it's very easy to use. There's people on the end of the phone that they can talk to when, if they have questions. It helps them with all these things around education and understanding how much they should be saving, helping them build goals for what they should be aiming for, helping them combine their pensions together. So all of this stuff we can do by being new and digital and tech-based, and automating a lot of the pain of the past to provide a better customer experience. And that's really what we're trying to do, and how we differentiate ourselves from some of the providers that have been around for a little bit longer.
I love that it pulls pensions together as well, because I went to see a financial advisor recently and I had, 15 different pensions?
Wow.
Yeah. So having something where they're all in one place, simple and good customer service is ideal.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so pulling it back to businesses again, what would you say is the one or the number one thing that businesses get wrong when it comes to pension schemes?
I think they deprioritize it against other benefits. We've run some research recently that spoke to 500 businesses and 2,000 employees, and there's sort of small, medium-sized businesses up to a couple thousand of staff. And by and large, the businesses ranked their different benefits in terms of what they thought was most important, and they put pensions down sort of middle of the road. You know, things like gym memberships and some of those flashier benefits were higher up. When we spoke to the employees, it was the other way around. So the number one most important benefit for employees in terms of them wanting to stay at an employer is their pension. So we know it's the most valued employee benefit. We know it's the most expensive employee benefit, and yet businesses aren't really getting the most out of this, which is their most expensive benefit. They're not getting the most value out of their pension. So again, a bit of backstory: when some regulation changed about 10 years ago, when auto enrollment came in and every business had to offer a pension scheme for the first time, businesses, quite rightly, just needed a solution to comply with those regulations. So there are various platforms that helped them launch a pension scheme. And by and large, they've kept with those platforms for the last 5-10 years. And I think now is the point at which businesses are starting to wake up to the fact that their staff don't really engage with that pension savings in those platforms. They rarely log on. They rarely appreciate that that's actually a fundamental and significant part of their pay packet. And there's a real opportunity to create or improve your retention, improve your employer brand by having a bit more of a forward-thinking pension scheme that really helps employees value that money that you're already paying into the business, into the pension, just by having a more modern tech-based platform that actually engages the staff. So a very, very simple example is when our clients run payroll each month and the pension contributions land, the staff get a notification on their app with the company logo on it saying your £273 has been paid into your pension. And now, if they had been paying attention before, they would have known that was happening. But that visibility just immediately brings a lot more sort of, you can see the money. You go, oh, great. I didn't realize that my company was paying this additional money on top of my paycheck into my account. So little things like that. That's probably the thing that businesses get wrong, and the sort of the value that's on the table by sort of revitalizing their pension.
Yeah, I have to say, whenever I applied for a job in the past, and it might be me personally, but if the pension pot looks really attractive, that's a huge draw, because particularly as well, if you get used to putting away a certain amount of money and it's going to benefit you in the future, it's awesome. But I think a lot of organisations don't, as you say, put the value on that they should. You talked a little bit there about how actually it's an expensive benefit, but obviously we know it's one that companies need to have. How much are employers required to pay into a pension? Where are the figures in terms of that?
Yeah. So the regulations are that via auto enrollment, every company has to offer a pension scheme to their staff, has to opt in all of their staff to a pension scheme, where 8% of their salary is being paid in, or their earnings is being paid in each year, but on a monthly basis. That 8% is split 3% from the employer and 5% from the employee. Now, that's not necessarily 8% of their salary. That can be, the company can choose what that 8% is applied to, whether it's what's called qualifying earnings, which is sort of a slice of their salary. It's above a minimum threshold of 10 or so K up to 45 or 50K. 8% of that slice of earnings that goes into the pension. And talking about number one things that a company gets wrong, I think a lot of the problem with auto enrollment is because it's government mandated. People think, well, that's the level that I should be paying into my pension, and I'll be fine as long as that 8% of qualifying earnings is paid in. But actually, that's nowhere near enough for people to be saving enough for later life. You're looking more at sort of 12% of full salary is the sort of benchmark. If someone saves that from the start of their career to the end, they should be fine. So you have a lot of businesses that are paying the minimum, understandably, because they want to control their cost base. But that's 8% of a slice of earnings, which unfortunately isn't doing enough for their staff. So you can choose, as I say, between 8% of qualifying earnings, 8% of salary, or 8% of total earnings. It's up to the company to choose.
Okay. And what if employees don't want to pay into a pension? So just thinking about the way the world and the economy is right now, there might be people thinking, do you know what, I just can't quite afford to do that. What happens if they don't want to pay in?
Well, it's up to the employee, so they can opt out. You see across the industry about 9% of staff are opting out of their auto enrollment scheme. So when an employee joins a business, they have up to 3 months to choose whether they want to be in the pension scheme or not, and they can opt out at any time. And at that point, they get that 5% in their paycheck instead of it going into the pension scheme. The problem is they then miss out on the free money, in inverted commas, from the employer, that 3%. So you have to put in the 5% from the employee to get the 3% from the employer. So understandably, cost of living crisis, if you want to take that extra 5% in your paycheck, you should just bear in mind, or employees should just bear in mind, that they're then going to lose that 3% from the employer, which is effectively pay. So that's the trade-off.
Awesome. Tell us a little bit more about Penfold. I know we kind of touched on it a little bit. So what made you get into providing digital pensions?
Yeah, so I suppose I have a history with pensions that goes back to probably my first job, actually, when I was at Deloitte, training as an accountant. And I read a really interesting article that talked about compound interest, which is a concept we haven't talked about yet, but it's a super powerful one when it comes to pension saving, because what it means is that when you're saving into a pension, your money is invested to generate a return. You might expect something like 5% growth each year, which may not sound like a lot. You have £100 in your pension, it grows by £5 the next year. What happens though over a very long time with pensions, if you have 30 years, that 5% the second year is on £105, not £100, and it just sort of grows and grows and grows in a bit of a snowball effect. And I read this very powerful example where if you save £100 a month from age 20 to age 30 and then stop and don't save another penny, you would have more at age 70 than if you had saved for 40 years from age 30 to 70. And that's just the power of compound interest. So saving for 10 years could get you more than saving for 40 years, saving 4 times as much, just through the power of starting early. And I think from that point on, I've been a bit of an annoying person to my friends, nagging them to save more into their pension, but forever been frustrated with quite how hard the platforms and the pension companies that myself and my friends were trying to use were. So got talking with my co-founder, Pete, who had just set up the workplace pension for the company that he was working at previously. And he saw, that was a painful process setting it up. None of his staff really paid attention to it. And so we got talking about how this is a big opportunity to solve this massive problem in society of people not saving enough, just by making the pension scheme better. Pensions are a really powerful thing. You've got this concept of compound interest. You've got really great tax breaks from the government. It's just the way that they're served to people is stuck in the dark ages. So we wanted to change all of that, and so that's why we took the plunge to set up a pension company.
And how do you go about kind of serving pensions to people in a different way? I love that serving idea.
Yeah, so we offer pensions in a fairly flexible way. So individuals can come to us direct to our website and open a personal pension account that they can pay into whenever they want, but they can use to track down and combine their other pensions from previous jobs all into one place. We also offer a workplace pension that we are going to businesses and helping them switch from a more outdated platform to Penfold. When they do that, we have an account management team that goes in and runs training sessions with staff and helps them understand more about pensions, ask as many questions as they want, and really we go quite far with that. So we plug into their messaging platforms so that whenever they have a question, we can answer it straight away on an ongoing basis, and all of that good stuff to try and provide a bit more of a human face to pensions. But we also work with third parties like accountancy firms who might manage the pension scheme for 100 clients, and we've built a platform that makes it easy for accountants to manage the pensions for their clients. And so we reach and serve customers through that way as well. So really it's an app-based digital product for the end customer, and then modern sort of responsive, friendly, human-based account management and customer service for the employers and their accountants.
Oh, amazing. I love an app. Just makes things so much easier, doesn't it? I'm sure it's not too much more difficult to go online, but I prefer an app. It's just so much easier. Quick click, see what's going on, all that good stuff.
I mean, it's how people want to organize their lives these days. They don't want to be going back to their laptop every time to do things. But we're trying to bring a pension to life a little bit. So there's the fundamentals where you're paying into a pension and that goes up in value, hopefully, or and you can combine pensions. But there's so much more to it. Your pension is invested in companies all around the world. So we allow customers to see all the thousands of companies that they own a little piece of. And those companies have annual general meetings where they vote on important things like their sustainability and their climate policy. And we allow our customers to vote on those important votes. So if one of our customers owns a little piece of Apple or Tesla or Coca-Cola or whatever, and one of those companies is voting on something important like executive pay or gender pay gap or something, our pension customers can participate in those votes, which I think is really great and just allows people to, as I say, brings this savings pot that they might not be thinking about too much to life a little bit. So that's what we're trying to do.
That's awesome. I think it's great to be able to just have that amount of detail and see what's going on, because I have to say, with pension pots that I've interacted with when I've been in the corporate world, you just don't really know what's going on or where the money is, and a lot of people are bothered about sustainability now and all that kind of good stuff. And on the sustainability, so I've just linked it very nicely there, having a look at your website, obviously there was quite an emphasis on sustainability on there too. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why it's so important to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's crucial to society in terms of environmental sustainability at the moment, and very important to Penfold. As a company, we're very committed to sustainability. As a business ourselves, we're in a net zero office. We have very low footprint ourselves, but I think more importantly, we've got hundreds of millions of pounds of our customers' money that's invested around the world. So we have sustainable investment options for our customers to invest in. So so that they can choose to invest their money in companies that are doing better in the world. And what we're working on, something that we're really excited about at the moment, which is a new investment strategy that goes much further. So at the moment we have these sustainable plans, which are great, where they choose to invest, as I say, in the better companies out there and fewer of the worst companies out there. But we want to create a savings plan that actually makes a difference in the world, and has an impact on environmental sustainability in particular, and net zero and reducing carbon emissions. So watch this space, but that should be coming in the next few months, where customers can choose to invest their money in a way that grows their pension pot for themselves, but also actually makes a difference in the world. So really excited by that.
That's super exciting. I'm definitely going to be watching that space. So with your workplace pensions then, are there any particular size of companies that you work with? Do they have to be big companies, small companies? What works best for you?
Yeah, we're mostly speaking to companies up to 500 staff, so all the way down to 5-10 person companies. Typically in the sort of 50 to 500 staff range makes a lot of sense, where a company might have hired their first head of HR or head of people, who is starting to look at that benefits package, and starting to look at some of the systems and providers that they've got in place, that they may have had in place since they were a 2-person company, that perhaps don't work anymore once you've got 50 people or more. And that's typically the trigger point to reassess and say, actually, we could be getting more out of something like a pension. So those are the sort of size companies. We've got a couple businesses that are with about 2,000 staff, but generally that's sort of 50 to 500 employees. Sweet spot makes a lot of sense for us.
Fabulous. I think that's pretty much all of my questions, but whilst I've got the expert on the line, is there anything else that you think it would be useful for our listeners and viewers to hear about pensions in general?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of the most important points. I would just encourage people who own businesses of any size to just think about it. It's actually very simple to switch a pension scheme, particularly if someone like Penfold is helping, and with our team. But at least start to think about it and speak to the staff. I think that's the most important first step. It's, are your staff happy with what they currently receive? Do they engage with it? Do they ever use, or do they know how much is in their pension pot? And you might find that the answer is that no, they don't really engage. And we think that's a bit of a missed opportunity. So have a think whether switching to a sort of more modern platform that helps your staff improve their financial well-being. Ultimately, that leads to happier workers and ones that stay with your business. So it's worth thinking about. It's the most, as you say, it's your most expensive employee benefit, and one that your staff value a lot. So worth considering.
Awesome stuff. And how can people get hold of you? So if they want to get a bit more advice or want to come along and use the platform, where can they find you and how can they get hold of you?
Absolutely. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want to hear more. Just search Chris Eastwood and Penfold, and I should come up. If you just want to learn more about pensions or Penfold in general, our website, getpenfold.com, is a great place where you can read more about it and request a call from our sales team, or our chat through your options, help you benchmark your pension scheme versus your competitors, help you think about some savings you can make by switching to a modern scheme as well. So website, getpenfold.com, or LinkedIn, Chris Eastwood, is where to find us.
Awesome stuff. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for just simplifying things. I struggle with numbers, but everything you said kind of just makes sense. It makes it a lot cleaner, crisper and clearer. So hopefully that's a fabulous advert for the way that Penfold works as well. So thank you very much for your time. Hopefully we'll speak again soon, and have an awesome day.
Absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks very much, Trish, and have a great day.
Fabulous. Thank you.
Bye.